More Perfect Union, a podcast about the joy we get from American politics, or as I sometimes like to say, real debate without the hate. Hi, I'm Kevin Kelton. I live in Los Angeles, and I'm a moderate Democrat.
Hi, I'm Emily Brewer. I'm a moderate Republican from Virginia.
Hi, I'm Jonah Knight. I am in Maryland for the last time, and I am some kind of an independent.
Hi, I'm Greg Matuzak. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, and I'll be your liberal Democrat today.
And DJ McGuire couldn't join us today, but he'll be back next week. Please remember to find us on the web at moreperfectunionpodcast.com, where we have blogs, commentary, and our podcasts. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/moreperfectunionpodcast. Most importantly, rate and review us on iTunes because that brings in more listeners. And please share our link on your Facebook newsfeed and tell your friends that we do a good job. So, today happens to be Father's Day, and we thought we would start today's episode talking about fathers as it relates to politics, because everything that in our world relates to politics.
Everything.
So first of all, I want to say Happy Father's Day to all the dads on this broadcast, which really incorporates all of us. We're all fathers, except for Emily, but she has a father, and I hear he is a great one. Was, whatever, you'll tell us. But I came across this article in the Washington Post today that I thought might be interesting for us to touch upon, because according to the Washington Post's research, there is a difference between Republican dads and Democratic dads. Apparently, Republican dads think that they're really, really good fathers, and Democratic dads not so sure about themselves. Guys, what do you think about that?
Well, if you're asking if Democrats have low self-esteem, I think that goes. I mean, you could look at any bill that the Democrats have put through or have tried to put through, and like, oh, guys, you think this could work? Oh, gosh, I mean, that's the Democratic, policies. Oh, gosh, maybe you think, and the Republican, we can do this, sure, why not? Yeah, that pretty much goes without saying,
You know what I found really, really interesting about the article? I had a chance before we hopped on to read it, and I was kind of really enjoying the fact that both Republican and Democratic dads admit that their wives take on the majority responsibility of raising the children, which I found to be really, really interesting. Still operating from traditional roles.
Right, but the Democrats were more likely to be either stay-at-home dads or to assume a little more of the responsibility.
Right.
Right.
And
I am a stay-at-home dad.
Right.
So, if I look at those, I go, well, I don't think that. That's so outdated. Or But go on. I'm sorry.
And I'm just a stay-at-home person. I don't know what I am, but I just stay at home a lot.
Did you guys talk politics with your dads?
Yes, and we bonded quite a bit over it, and I think that's where I got my love of politics from.
You know what I really want to know? I just want to ask you guys, what political party are your dads?
My dad was an FDR liberal Democrat, loved Jack Kennedy, loved Lyndon Johnson, hated every Republican that I ever mentioned to him.
Jonah?
Well, my grandfather was radical left, and my dad was. I think he probably would have been a Democrat, but he was a convicted felon, so he sort of removed himself from a lot of politics, and sort of like he just stopped paying attention a lot at a certain point. I think he felt like he couldn't really have an effect on it anymore, so he stopped thinking about it.
What about you, Emily?
So my dad is still alive. Obviously, he's pretty spry. He is a Republican. His parents were Democrats that became Republicans somewhere like in the late 70s, I think. So I don't know what was going on then in Ohio, though, Greg. So maybe you can tell me later. But so yeah, we never really talked about politics though. Which is kind of interesting. So he kind of let me find my own way, which is pretty cool.
We had a really shift in We had some really corrupt Democrats. I'll be the honest to tell you. And we also had what's his name? The talk show host, Jerry Springer.
Oh,
yeah, he was in the 70s here. At least if they were from Cincinnati.
Cleveland.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a different story. My father, and I say this openly, for years, whatever he did, I did just to spite him. So he is, to this day, a hardcore Republican. And I am obviously a pretty liberal Democrat. And he has shaped my political views just by being one way, and I would go the exact opposite. And so just so that we could argue about something for years. And now that I have said he is now doing the exact opposite to me just to spite me now that we've gotten older. Because we've just grown into that pattern and we find it enjoyable, I think.
I'm going to have to look your dad up and go to dinner with them when I'm up there.
Oh, he's pretty funny. He right now is super red hot. Just PISSED. That so many people are not supporting Trump, even though they signed a pledge. It was a signed pledge. Every time they call and ask for money, they go, "It was a signed pledge." People have words. So he's not giving any money to the RNC until everyone, falls in line. And so I said, "Okay, Dad." So I forgot for his birthday this year. He doesn't listen to this, but my brother does. So I hope he doesn't tell him. I'm probably going to get him a Trump hat.
By the way, I got to tell you guys what my kids, an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old, got me for Father's Day, and this is not a joke. I swear, I'm looking at it right now. They got me a horny Hillary blow-up doll.
That's pretty awesome.
Now, does Hillary get any money from that? Do you think?
That's a good question. I doubt it.
I'm just wondering if they sell one with Bill.
Yeah.
Well, this thing was made by people that do not like Hillary Clinton because on the back they have a whole description and it's pretty right wing.
Is it blow up or is it?
Yes. It's a blow up doll. It's a sex toy.
Oh, okay.
I think I'll be leaving it in the box. I think I'll be.
There goes our rating for the week.
we are not here to judge.
I think it's a collector's item.
Yeah, that's
I hope so.
That's okay. Moving on. Speaking of Hillary, and I don't know how we can move on in a nice way. Hillary is we talked about this last week about the significance about Hillary being the first woman presumptive nominee from a major party. And what I always find funny is that last week Emily wasn't here. Unfortunately, to discuss this with us, we had a bunch of white men talking about it and giving our opinions about the historical significance. And it's always funny when we do that because it's a bunch this history blah blah blah. But now that she is here, I kind of like Emily, who's a Republican woman, to get her reactions.
So you guys are going to be shocked, I think.
No.
No, I think it's really, really cool. I honestly do. I think that, I know people can say that there were past women that were presidential nominees from, fly-by-night parties, and yeah, that existed. But, this is pretty huge. She is the, first nominee from a major, well-respected political party, we'll say.
Okay.
And, I think it's really cool. I think it's awesome that women are breaking a glass ceiling, but I think there's a lot of work still to be done. And the reason I say that is because I know, like Kevin has talked about in the past, that, I think he leans towards Elizabeth Warren as a VP pick. But even though women have still broken that glass ceiling, I don't think that we're ready for two women. So there's a lot of work to be done.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah. Look, let me. I want to talk about that, but give me one quick second.
Oh, okay.
I will say this though: is I think that honestly, it's not as big of a deal as people are making because I think Barack Obama, stole the show, if you will, being our first African American president, that it's like, okay, we've been there, done that kind of thing. We've broken a barrier that, we're not electing white men. So I feel like if she would have been first, if she would have won against Brock last time, it would have been a bigger deal. So just my 2 cents on that.
What are, as far as like women's issues, like gender, wage issues and assault issues and things like that, safety on campuses and things like that. How important are those when a candidate speaks about them? I mean, whether they go through Congress and but when they speak about them, because we've seen the 2 candidates have really different, like, I think this way and I think that way. Are those things that you really take in? Or are those like, this is lip service? Or are women's issues like maybe 3rd or 10th on your list?
I will say this, is first of all, I've always said that if you are ever to vote in any election, I've always said you vote in your local elections if you had to pick one first, because your local and your state elections will affect your life with more immediacy than anything else anyway.
Amen. Good for you.
Which pisses me off when, we had 1.9% turnout in one of our primaries here, congressional. Anyways, but I think the biggest issue is a lot of it coming at the presidential level. Both sides, it is lip service. I'm glad I know where they stand on issues. But, I think women are getting to a point of gender equality. But, there's some perceptions we've got to break along the way. And I don't think that Hillary Clinton is going to be our savior in that sense. But, women's issues, I am pro-life. I was adopted. There's no way I can't be pro-life. I mean, I wouldn't be here otherwise. So,
okay.
There's no arguing that one with me. So,
no.
Moot point there. But, I'm on the flip side. I'm for marriage equality. Hence why I'm the moderate. In a lot of, in many senses. But I think DJ's for marriage equality as well. I won't speak for him.
Yeah.
But I believe he is.
No, actually, while he's gone, we should speak for him. This would be our. This is our chance. We should.
So, but let's go back.
I hear he hates Margaret Thatcher too.
Let's go back to Kevin's point. Actually, talking about Elizabeth Warren.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Right. Well, first of all, let me just jump in and do one personal thing, and then I do want to ask you about that. Since it is Father's Day and we are talking about, you asked about our fathers and how political they were and whether we talked about politics with them. One of the things that I remember distinctly from growing up with my dad is, and I don't remember whether this was in the late 60s or the early 70s, but I remember being at the kitchen table and we actually discussed who would get elected first, a black man or a woman. And he believed a woman would. I said a black man. And my dad, who, obviously grew out of a different time, he said, no way, it will not happen. He didn't say never, but he definitely didn't think there was any chance that a black man would be elected before a woman. So that always stuck with me, and I thought that was interesting. Going back to the point about whether the country is ready for 2 women on a ticket, I'm really fascinated by this, and I want to push it a little bit more with everybody here, because obviously I understand the intellectual side, it's going to be groundbreaking even just to have a woman in the White House. There is a built-in misogyny in our society. There are some men who probably think even a woman president is a step too far. But we're talking about a very narrow band of people. And so whenever I've had this discussion with people and they say the country isn't ready for 2 women, I keep asking, why? I just don't see it. If we could assume that 51% of people would vote for Hillary Clinton, why would it be only 48% that would vote for Hillary Clinton and Elizabeth Warren? I just don't understand it.
I think it brings to light, though, that this is going to be the successor to the presidency. And for some reason, I feel like even though we may have a female nominee on the Democratic side, I think people in the back of their minds, even at the Democratic Party, and I've talked to people that I won't throw under a bus, that still feel like they need a man to assist in leading the country. And I know that's, a bit old school, but there are people that feel that way, and I can't understand why, besides the fact that they're from a different time.
Well, let me come back to that. I don't want to preclude Greg and Jonah getting in on this, but let me come back to that. First of all, if Hillary is elected, she will have by her side the best male surrogate in the world, which is Bill Clinton. So right there, that's taken care of. But even beyond that, if we say, well, he's just going to be, the first spouse and maybe he won't be as hands-on as a vice president. First of all, vice presidents do not hold the hand of presidents. They take marching orders. Dick Cheney was a rarity. But most vice presidents are just there to be that person if anything were to happen to the president to take over. They're also going to have an entire cabinet. They're also going to have national security advisors. The idea that she's somehow... that two women would be lost without a man in the room. Again, it's bizarre thinking to me. And I'm not putting you down, Emily. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm really trying to wrap my head around this, and I'd like to hear from the other guys. Do you feel the same way?
No, I don't think Emily's saying that she feels that way.
No,
I don't
think she is either.
Not at all.
No. But I think that there is enough of America that might feel that way.
But again,
why?
Differentiate between enough of America who would vote for a woman but wouldn't vote for a woman with a female running mate.
It's the same where enough would vote for John McCain with anybody else and John McCain and Sarah Palin. And granted,
but John McCain wasn't going to win that election with Mitt Romney as his running mate or with Mike Huckabee as his running mate. He wasn't going to win. He wasn't going to win it with Lieberman as his running mate. He wasn't going to win.
No,
that would have been interesting.
By the way,
that would have been a better race. That would have been a much better race.
For all of Sarah Palin's faults, I think she has more balls than Joe Lieberman. So.
I my neutered dog has more balls than Joe Lieberman.
But anyways, I don't want to spend the whole show talking about that, but I did want to bring it up. I would love to hear, Jonah, what you think.
Well, I guess I have two thoughts. One is that I can imagine any theoretical idiot with views that I just don't understand, and I can believe that there are a whole bunch of them around that I just don't run into, and even if I do know them, I don't know that they are an idiot in this way. So I believe in their theoretical existence, though I can't explain it, much like the Loch Ness Monster and aliens. But what I think the real fallout from this is that having now had a black president, and I do think that Clinton is going to be the next president. So having both of them as our most recent presidents, I think that following this cycle, it's going to be harder to vote for two white men. I think that's just going to look weird. And even the Republicans, I think, are going to need to go to, can we find another Cuban guy? Can we find, where isn't there a woman in New Mexico? I think there's going to be more of that moving forward, and two white guys will be the rarity.
I think you're right.
There's something we've got to say, too, about this is, no one's thinking about this, is I think Elizabeth Warren would be a fine running mate on the Democratic side, but I don't think she's the right choice. Not because she's a woman, because Massachusetts is a reliable Democratic state. I would be picking someone from a swing state, like a Tim Kaine or a Mark Warner from Virginia.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we could talk a little bit about the vice president. Yes, so Tim Kaine does add a little bit of weight in Virginia. That's true.
I think she's going to get Virginia, though.
Could maybe do the same thing. Here's the thing. I think that she's going to take that state. I agree. I think she's going to be strong in Virginia. We're going to look at the electoral map a little later in the podcast. But, they say that vice presidents don't carry states for you. If you can't carry that state, you'd have to have a really dynamic person. And, Lyndon Johnson did carry Texas for JFK. I think that's the last time that happened. So I understand the point. Again, personally, I think that what Hillary needs to do is unite the party and bring on her base. And I think that Warren would add much more. She'd be much more value added in that regard than Tim Kaine would in helping carry Virginia. But I understand your point.
But I also think that it's also a huge priority for the Democrats to take back Congress in some form. And governor of Massachusetts right now is a Republican. So if Elizabeth Warren leaves, a Republican will be appointed to her seat. So
right. Well, they've actually looked into this, Joan. I don't know whether you saw the articles, but Harry Reid had a study done, and it turns out that you can once a senator from Massachusetts resigns, the governor has to he or she can appoint an interim person, but within 180 days they have to call a special election to have a formal election for that space. So if Warren were to be on the ticket, and if they were to win, the day after the election, she sends a letter to the governor saying she's resigning her post. That means that the whole period before the inauguration would count as part of that 180 days. So there'd only be about a 3-month period where they might have a Republican instead of a Democrat. And then, of course, that assumes that a Democrat would win the seat. But apparently, Harry Reid has given the Clinton campaign his approval to pick Warren because of that.
Oh, then it's okay.
Oh, well, if Harry Reid says it.
And Chuck Schumer. So,
the two of my favorite people.
Well, he's taken over. So, the other thing that we should probably talk about this week is, I was surprised that word came out very definitively on Thursday that one of the names of people who is not being vetted for Hillary Clinton's potential VP is Bernie Sanders. And this was announced just 2 days after the two of them met in a very high-profile meeting on June 14th during the D.C. primary day. And that tells me that meeting may not have gone very well for Senator Sanders, because I was surprised at how definitively the Clinton campaign leaked word that he was not being vetted. What say you?
Is that a surprise to anybody?
It's a surprise to me.
But I mean, the man has spent the first couple months of his campaign, he would have been a great. But then when he went on offense the past 4 or 5 months, he can't come back and say, all right, I've said terrible things about her. Terrible things. But you know what? She turned out to be all right in my book.
But
She'd
people
be
do
great.
that all the time. I mean,
they don't do that.
Look at Chris
do that.
Christie. Look at George H.W. Bush had a very bitter feud with Ronald Reagan during the 1980 Republican primary campaign, and they came together. JFK and Lyndon Johnson had no love lost.
Oh, they hated each other
before JFK picked him. And I could go down the list. There's been plenty of examples of people that, for political expediency, came together after bad-mouthing each other.
Right. Chris Christie will do anything for a Klondike bar.
Yeah.
But
well, you mean to advance his career.
To advance his career.
We're not picking on his weight.
I'm not. I didn't mean to say that. But I mean, he's doing anything because he wants to be Attorney General. I mean, he really thinks he's going
to be vice president. But
that ship sailed long time ago.
I think Sanders would be a terrible choice. I mean, I thought it early on. I still think it. I don't care what kind of, from a campaign perspective, I don't care what kind of fanaticism that Bernie has. I don't think he's a good choice. And I'll tell you why. Is when someone's hitting the campaign trail and you're working tirelessly, you're going to look worn out, you're going to look worn down. And I think his age, and his age being so obvious, would work against their success. But what I do think, and I know this is so left field, but I think Joe Biden would be a good choice as well, because I think showing continuity from the Obama presidency would give Hillary a boost in the polls. I think Joe Biden would be a superb choice for the Democratic side.
I've thought of that, and I agree, and I would be quite happy as a Clinton supporter. I would be quite happy with that. Yeah.
But how old is Joe Biden?
He's 74. He's 73, 74. He's about the same age.
He's the same age.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter though, because he is a more cleaned up, well dressed, well put together. He doesn't look his age. Bernie looks like someone plucked him off the street and he's homeless. So.
And the other thing that Biden brings to the ticket, I'm sorry, I jumped on you.
No.
The other thing that Biden brings to the ticket is his strengths are Hillary's weaknesses and he would bring integrity, likability, honor to the ticket, and I think that would be a good value add for her.
Right. I love Joe Biden. Okay, Joe Biden's a good Catholic. Him and I go way back. He's a human gaffe machine that, and he's wonderful. And if you ask me, he's one of the good guys. And when it was time, like, hey, are you going to run against Hillary? He was like, nope, it's not going to happen because I'm probably going to lose. So what? And he took one for the team. And I hope Hillary has something for him in her administration because he's a really good guy. But I just don't see him having 4 more years. He just put out a press release saying, you know what? I really like ice cream. That was a press release. It was on, a thing. He was like, not all the people know this, but I really like ice cream. There was a whole article about how much Joe Biden likes ice cream.
Joe Biden would also be a great Secretary of State, but we're getting far out.
I know. Yeah, he's a great guy, but
I like the idea of the uniqueness of the sitting vice president is now going to run on the ticket to be vice president again. I think, for the quirky first-time factor, that would be interesting to me. But I think that one of the problems that the Democratic Party has right now is kind of a shallow bench. Yes. And I think that they need to start pulling up people from the minors, and that means finding a governor, finding a well-respected elected official that can help pull up some people into more prominence for the future. So I don't know. I think that's why it's one of the reasons why I sort of think maybe Elizabeth Warren isn't quite there. She's solid in what she is. She doesn't need a promotion, but maybe somebody else does.
Yeah, but again, who is that person? People have talked about Julian Castro. I think he's not
Texas.
ready.
You don't
need
Texas.
He's not ready, okay? And then, Tim Kaine, to me, is the future of the Democratic Party. I don't think so. To me, the image of her standing on stage holding up Tim Kaine's hand in victory is one of the most boring choices she could possibly make.
What do you guys think?
I'm already asleep.
Yeah, and the same with Sherrod Brown, who I really like, So, and then you talk, Al Franken. I don't think he's ready. So
Al Franken's the best!
So, but,
oh my God.
But come on, but to be vice president, one of the things that happened over the last 20 years, when Dick Cheney became vice president and then Joe Biden became vice president, these guys took that office to a different level. We now expect the vice president not to just be someone waiting in the wings, but to be someone who's, engaged, who can give advice, who we trust in a national crisis. And unfortunately, there's no one, frankly, I'll speak for myself. The only one that I can see doing that is either Brown or Kaine. Elizabeth Warren, personally, for me, still isn't there, although I would support her being on the ticket. But certainly none of these other names, Deval Patrick, Cory Booker, none of these other names fill that role.
Sherrod Brown won't do it.
From a Republican perspective, I think one of the big topics that is going to continue through November, obviously with Orlando just happening, is going to be domestic terrorism, terrorism in general, how we deal with ISIS. And I think that for the Democrats to be successful as well, you've got to find somebody that brings a sense of calm to the Democratic side. And for those that are on the fence about Trump and think about they may want to switch and vote for Hillary, they need something that's going to just seal the deal for them. And I think that on the Democratic side, someone like Wesley Clark might not be a bad choice.
Oh, interesting.
Isn't Wesley Clark a Republican?
No, he's a Democrat.
I'm thinking
and has been a huge Hillary supporter going back to 2008.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, he ran because he was recruited by the Clintons.
In 2004, is that right?
Yeah, that's what he said that, yeah.
I didn't know that. I actually was a supporter of his for that brief time that he was running in 2003. I went to see him speak.
He won Oklahoma. Didn't he win Oklahoma?
I went to rallies. Well, he dropped out at late 2003, I think.
Yeah.
But he's a very bright man. I don't think that she's going to tap him for this. I think she'll tap him in her cabinet. But I wouldn't be I wouldn't be shocked if she went with somebody with him or somebody like him. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very bright man.
Yeah.
Okay, speaking of, Emily mentioned another thing that we really have to touch on this week, which is Orlando. It's still in the news. We're laying to rest now the victims. We're learning more about the shooter. And this week there was also a lot of activity in the Senate with the Chris Murphy Senate filibuster, which seems to have led to the possibility of having a vote this week on a couple of gun safety legislative changes. I don't know how you describe them. They're weak tea to me. But I'd like to hear what you guys think about that, how it could impact the election, and really what you think of what's happened in the Senate in the last couple of days.
Well, I think it could really change the numbers in the Senate, because we're going to see who votes for these Democratic bills and who votes for or against. The Democrats came, for those who've been in Iraq or coma or something, who didn't know, Chris Murphy, during a moment of silence, said, "Look, we're not going to take this anymore, and I'm going to lead this filibuster, and we're going to keep talking and talking." And other Democrats kept saying, "Look, we're done. Please listen to these bills and bring them up and we will keep holding these filibusters until we're ready to listen, and we will not get any work done," which really wasn't like any other day in the Senate. But what's going to be interesting is if the GOP senators vote against them, then the American public is going to say, wait, why are they voting against things that seem to make sense? Which might not have really actually changed anything in the Orlando shooting, but still could cause them to lose their seats come November. And what do you guys think?
I think the Republicans missed a huge opportunity here to actually step up and do the same thing.
Right.
I think the filibuster is going to be a turning point depending on how this vote goes down. I do think, first of all, I'm a 2A supporter all day. I'm a gun owner. I'm a gun rights advocate, but I have absolutely no problem with increased background checks because I'm a law-abiding citizen, and I have no problem with it. Absolutely, positively no problem with advanced background checks. And honestly, I can't understand for the life of me why we do not have a universal system instead of a state-by-state. I think we need a states contributing to a master database.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, why are they keeping the CDC from actually even studying gun violence and gun death?
Right.
I mean, that's ridiculous.
So
go ahead, Jonah.
I've been reading some of these. This election, I'm reading up on my Libertarian Party platform and stuff, and I've been listening to some folks talk. And one of the ideas that has come up that has sort of resonated with me is that every time we have a big national tragedy, and 9/11 is a great example of this. The legislation that we pass really quickly in the heat of the moment, we almost always regret, because and no one can defend the Patriot Act to me. I mean, there are tons of things that happen, and yes, we see something like Orlando, and we see something like Sandy Hook, and we want something to happen, and we want to reduce gun violence, we want to reduce all kinds of violence and all this stuff. And I just think that when you look at the specific proposals that are on the table right now, one of the reasons why Chris Murphy did this filibuster is this tying, if you're on the no-fly list, you should be on the no-buy list, or something like that, which on the surface sounds great, except that the no-fly list is notoriously filled with problems. There's no oversight. There's no way to get off of it. There's no way to get a review. And so on the one hand, we want something to happen. It really feels to me like the underwear gnomes from South Park. For some reason, this was like the first thing that came to my head. Number 1, we are committed to reducing gun violence. Number 2, question mark. Number 3, we have reduced gun violence. And it's, that just keeps going through my mind. It's like whatever the solution is, it's not a bill. It's like a cultural change or something. And maybe that starts with a bill, and maybe there's some legislation that contributes to it. But I don't see the specific proposals that are on the table now as, and I want I want something to happen, but I don't see how these are much of a solution.
Yeah, but can we legislate? Is there a possible way to legislate a cultural change?
Well,
no.
I mean, I think
you can only do it through laws.
I wonder.
No, I mean,
like,
and I'm
I
not
don't-
being snarky. I mean,
Yeah, so I don't have the perfect answer for this, but I think it has something to do with Father's Day. I think it has something to do with being able to talk about politics with your family and with your kids, and then a generation goes by and maybe people are more responsible. Or there's something, I don't think it's short term. I think that we had a number of things have happened that have sort of gotten us to this, and it's not all domestic, though a lot of it's domestic. When a Christian terrorist shoots up an abortion clinic, I feel like that's terrorism, but we don't talk about it that way. But I don't know. I don't think there is a law. I think that if you want to go through this entire process and say, here is the no-fly list, and there is an actual review process to clarify it and make sure it's as error-free as possible, rather than being this kind of thing that we put people on, but their names are kind of similar, so we're just going to put a bunch of people on it to be safe.
First of all, let me jump in here. First of all, I hate to have to kind of disagree with you, Jonah, but there is a review process. I don't know where you got this idea that there's no review process. I've read articles where several people, Ted Kennedy was somehow on the no-fly list for a while. Yeah. Cat Stevens, who we all know is a Muslim. I forget his real name. Greg, you probably know it. Or his now Muslim name.
Yeah.
But he was on the no-fly list, and that was corrected. There is a system in place for it. Now, it can be improved, and I see no reason why part of this legislation couldn't be to budget some more money to have a more robust screening process so that can be improved, and that the system for appealing it can be improved. Now, one thing I want to come back to is there is kind of a very interesting kind of NRA strategy here that's ninja, jujitsu, aikido kind of a thing that I think the NRA is going to try to pull off this week, which is this. The version of the bill that the Democrats want is if you're on the no-fly list, you are also on the you can't buy a gun in the United States list, and you have to take action to appeal that in court to get off the no-fly list. That is the version of it, and I'm kind of simplifying it, but that's the approach that the Democrats want. The GOP version, which is more likely to be the one that they vote on, is that it's a 3-day period, and if the government doesn't act within 3 days to prove that somebody on the no-fly list belongs there, that person can then go ahead and buy a gun. So essentially, it's a 3-day waiting period to buy, an AR-15, which is no different than the waiting period that we have now, probably shorter. So what I think may happen is...
I have a problem with that.
Okay, well, let me just finish this and then you can jump in. What I think the NRA may do, and Trump also started giving some hints that he might, he's lobbying the NRA to try to get them to loosen their reins a little bit. If they let that legislation go through, it's a pyrrhic victory for the people that want stronger gun laws. The NRA can now say, look, we gave in. We actually did something to improve the system, so don't tell us that we're, totally inflexible. And Republican senators and congresspeople can vote for that. And if Democrats vote against it because they think it's too weak, then it will be flipped against the Democrats in the congressional elections. So I would look for this possibly happening this week because I think that's what Mitch McConnell is working toward.
Emily.
What do you think about that?
So the 3 days I think I have a problem with. I would even be open to going to 2 weeks to 30 days. And the reason I say this is because if we are going to vet these people, we're going to look into this, we've got to give the FBI or Homeland Security enough time to look at this. I just don't think it's reasonably possible in 3 days to be able to look at these people. And you know what? We have
exactly.
no room for
and that's why the GOP is for this. Because of that, they know that 72 hours will just pass. That's what they want.
And you know what? I would even be fine. I hate to say this, but for handguns, I think 3 days is fine. But when you're talking about, heavy artillery, I don't know. How would you guys feel about that? Would you be fine with handguns 3 days? Anything else?
No.
Okay.
First of all, it should
well,
be
of course.
you can
do a lot of damage.
Well, I think with heavier artillery, 30 days would be fine. I think handgun in 3 days is fine.
So now I'm going to be the Democrat
we were talking.
Here.
What?
It should be no heavy artillery should be sold in the United States. No one should be able to buy a bazooka or a flamethrower or an AR-15. And it should be
maybe a tank.
It should be 2 weeks minimum, in my opinion, 30 days to buy a gun in this country. I don't see what anybody needs a gun for unless, you're being stalked by your ex-husband or something like that. I don't see any reason that somebody has to go out and get a gun within 30 days. If I want a driver's license, it takes a lot longer than that. Okay?
It takes months.
So this idea that, you should be able to walk into a store and walk out, that day or 3 days later with a gun, my question is, why? You have your right to bear arms. You'll get the arms. But let's have a cooling down period for people that might be going out and buying it like this gentleman did because they have something in mind and maybe they need some time to work through their mental issues.
We talked about what could cause. We can't legislate a cultural shift, but it will take something. And like in Norway, there was a mass shooting of almost 80 people. Okay, and they had tougher gun laws than we did, or they still have a lot of guns. And in Australia, there was a mass shooting, and then they gave up all.
And they changed the law, and the mass shootings fell down to almost zero.
Right, and so we're getting to the point where mass shootings don't bother us really anymore, and their mass shootings are getting worse with Sandy Hook, Orlando, San Bernardino, and it's getting to the point where either they're going to get worse and worse, or we're going to be like, oh, well, that's another one. Oh, that's another one. We're just going to be, this is just not going to affect us anymore. And we're going to say, oh, well, maybe if we had more guns. Because the good guy with guns theory, it's a joke. It never happens. It's never going to happen.
So it has happened, and I posted an article on the
really?
Facebook page that actually was a reporter who said, "Has this actually happened?" And he found a dozen examples of non-law enforcement, like non-off-duty officers that used a gun to stop a shooting.
But they were law enforcement officers.
No, these were non-law enforcement people. These were civilians that had guns. So there are some. It maybe isn't as many as some people would say, but it's also not zero. And that was like, I want to say that was like it was a credible newspaper but that's back there.
Several years ago, locally, there was a convenience store robbery going on, and a guy in the store just stopping to get something to drink. Literally stopped a robbery, held the guy gunpoint until police could get there.
Yes, it did happen. It happens once in a blue moon.
So we're almost out of time. and I want to talk about Texas for a minute.
Let's talk about electoral map politics.
Let's talk about... Well, we can pick this up next week when we actually have...
So what do you want to say about Texas?
So we've been hearing for some time now that at some point in the new future, within our lifetime, Texas is at some point going to go blue for a presidential election. Yeah. And it's because of changing demographics and all this. And you can gerrymander all you like down there, but eventually it's going to be blue. And we are, because of the weird nominees we have this year, I don't know if it is going to go blue, but the most recent poll down there has Trump up by 2 in Texas. So I don't know what that means, and I'm not going to say that Hillary is like super popular down there, but I can imagine that if you're friends with like Latinos, that maybe this is not the candidate you want to pull your state red? So I don't know. That's the state that I'm looking at and just saying, oh, that's a good one.
Well, what it means is that the Republicans are going to have to spend money in Texas, which you never want to do. If you're spending money in Texas, you've got a big problem because that's an expensive market. It's a huge market. And if Donald Trump has to work to carry Texas, he's got headaches beyond anything we can imagine.
Yeah.
Also, looking at the map, Jonah provided us with a link to one of those electoral maps that tells you how states lean, how they're, which ones seem to be up for grabs. And I've also looked at, you provided us with the Real Clear Politics one. I'm also looking at 270 to win. For some reason, they're both very conservative this week in terms of what states are up for grabs, because they have Michigan up for grabs, which there's no way Michigan isn't going blue. They have Nevada up for grabs. Again, no way Donald Trump is carrying Nevada. And a couple of others that were real surprises to me. But looking at these maps, if you guys have the links, I mean, what do you think? Do you see a path to 270 for Donald Trump? I'm not seeing it.
Oh, no. No. This isn't going to happen. No. And especially since he's got so much of his own party running against him. Whether it's Mitt Romney, the Bushes, whether it's Eric Erickson, you've got bloggers, Bill Kristol, who else? You name it. You've got representatives. You've got who's from Illinois? Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks. Christine Todd Whitman has already said she's coming out against him. I could go on.
Now, there's a chance that he rights the ship of his campaign, and these people
and Lindsey
start to
Graham
come around again.
But you guys are missing something here. Regardless, I am not, I don't worship Trump. I don't, have like an idol in my home of him or anything, and I don't offer things to it. But I think you guys have got
a lotion.
Yeah. You guys just had imagery of that, I'm sure. So the one thing I think we've got to look at with this electoral map is a couple different considerations. When we're looking at this map, endorsements don't mean, or people that are detractors of candidates don't mean what they used to. Or else Bernie Sanders would have never been popular. Trump would have never been popular. We are in the year of anti, so I think some other states, as we get closer, will be in play. I'm even feeling like Pennsylvania may be in play, which I think is shocking. So I think there are going to be some people that are just going to go against the grain. I don't think Texas is in play. I looked at the crosstabs on that and some margin of error questions I have there with the specific poll. If I see a couple more that says that, I'd be more inclined to feel like, okay, hey, maybe this is a thing. And maybe if she picked Julian Castro, maybe it's a thing. But I just can't. I think we have a long way to go before we can say that Trump is out of this.
Right, but you don't see Florida going for Trump at all.
I have
Miami. He's lost Miami.
I have some question there.
Right, and I mean, even Ohio, is leaning really blue at this point.
We still have a long way to go.
We have a long way to go, and one of the discussions that I've seen a lot on social media the last week is, we all come out, we want to talk about the election. We go, hey, there's no way Trump is going to be elected president, or somebody says Hillary Clinton is the next president of the United States, and people start going, oh, don't say that. If you believe that, I think everybody realizes that when you have two people running, or in this case 3 or 4 people running, anything could happen. Obviously, there's always going to be a slim chance that Barry Goldwater had a chance of winning in 1964. In fact, I just watched All the Way, the LBJ movie, and he was worried about losing the election in the summer of '64, just 3 months before he literally wiped the country from shore to shore with Barry's you know what. But there's always a chance that Donald Trump can win this thing. Obviously, Hillary Clinton can have a major gaffe. Donald Trump can bring his campaign together. Maybe the vice presidential nominees somehow change the dynamics of this in Trump's favor. But it's very hard to sit here and say he has a really good shot. He does not have a 50-50 chance to become the next president of the United States. That's the way I look at it. He has maybe a 30% chance. Now, 30% is a shot. You know, long shots have won in the past.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
true.
He's already won as a long shot.
Right.
That's true.
And that's the other thing that kind of drives me nuts is when people say, "Oh gosh, are we running long?" People say, "Well, he beat 16 other people." Well, yeah, in a very weak field and maybe with a lot of luck in a very conservative electorate. Let's see how he does in a national electorate. Well, with that, we're kind of running longer than we had planned to. Anything else that you guys want to cover this week?
Maybe DJ's hatred of Margaret Thatcher, but besides that,
I thought he liked her.
no, secretly hates her. It's a big thing. He talks about how much he dislikes her.
I'm going to go
and
out
her,
and see if I can find a horny Margaret doll for him. And,
oh my goodness!
Oh, ship
yes.
that to him. That would be wonderful.
Oh my goodness! Yes, ship that one for all of us. And
Okay.
pretty much, yeah, he talks about the damage she did to the British all the time. Oh my goodness! Yes.
Well, with that, we want to
Well-
remind you. Oh, go ahead, Jonah.
Oh no, Emily, you had a thing, didn't you?
Yeah, I wanted to see if you guys wouldn't mind closing out this week with picking if you're Republican or Democratic ideal vice presidential candidate. See if we could kind of close with that.
Okay, go ahead.
Ideal, like perfect, or who we think?
Yeah, regardless of what they said, who would be your ideal on the Democratic side?
On the Democratic side, I'll go first because throughout history or like living.
No, like living and can, is
Like
able
a real
to.
possibility.
Yeah. Like a real
Not
possibility.
Oprah Winfrey. You know, a real
Right.
possibility.
Oh, okay, like Al Franken. Oh my gosh, I loves me some Al Franken.
Okay. Jonah?
Well, the Libertarian Party's set, so I have my vice presidential candidate.
There you go,
and
William
and
Well.
he's a dream. Yeah.
Any chance that we could steal him away from you?
Yeah.
No, but I'll work to convince you to vote for him.
Okay. Well, I'm going to say that my dream candidate is either Elizabeth Warren or Joe Biden, and for the reasons that I've stated many times. Go ahead.
Just to piss off Greg, I would love for Kasich. Just for you, I love you, Greg.
Mr. Trump could do a lot worse. I don't think
no,
Kasich
I
will
don't
do
think
it.
he could.
I think he will.
I think he will. And with that,
Don't
we
think
want to say thank you for listening. Please remember to find us on the web at moreperfectunionpodcast.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/moreperfectunionpodcast. Please rate and review us on iTunes because that's really helping us bring in more and more listeners each week. And share our link on your Facebook feed and tell your friends how much you like us. And with that, we say once again, Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there and all the mothers who love them and all the sons and daughters who had great fathers or have great fathers. And we look forward to seeing you back here next week.